are now listening to United 96 Podcast on the RFK Refugees Podcast Network.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to RFK Refugees Podcast. Ted here, John here. We are back. We are live. We have returned, made our triumphant return to the airwaves to talk DC United, a popular DC podcast, as reported by the New York Times.
There have been requests for T-shirts, and that just might happen. Who knows?
That might happen. I've resisted it. The context of the story I felt like mattered, but I think maybe you know what? I will let the people decide there. Should we do T-shirts of that?
There you go.
So we do T-shirts of that, people. But John, welcome in, my friend. It feels like it's been so long since we've talked, and we've been talking through text. We've been talking through messages. We've been talking about the team. We've been watching the team. We've been paying attention. We just haven't been talking about it.
We've been watching from the wings of the wings of the theater versus in the front. But yeah, we have been. It's you would normally ask how was your weekend, but it's just there's just too much of time in between. So suffice it to say, we're happy to be back. We're happy to be live broadcasting this. We're happy to not be just simulcasting our Zoom call. With Producer Brian is back. So if you're watching live, if those of you are watching live, you see it looks a little bit better. I mean, Aside from the fact that my face is huge because I am on my laptop in a hotel room in Indianapolis, but so much that I want to bring to you the goods that I am hardships were afforded to make this happen. We're doing it.
Yeah, this will be a jam-packed show. So please, people, get your questions in, get your thoughts into the Twitch chat, on Twitter, however you want to do it if you're watching the show, or X, I guess. That's something else weird that has happened since we have come back.
Zeet at us. Just zeet to us, and then we will re-zeet it.
Oh man, the world is stupid. Anyway, let's get in. Let's just jump right into it, John. I think that we've owed the people some response, maybe some further discussion. We've talked a little bit about it. I think we've all had some time to maybe collect. So if you have not been aware, if this is your first show, first of all, welcome.
Weird timing for you to have done that, but welcome.
Weird timing. So, but if you're not aware, there was another incident involving Taxi Fountas, this time with a teammate, Nigel Robertha, which was the genesis of us deciding to take a hiatus. And I think we've had some discussion. There's been, I think, the initial decision was based on a lot of assumptions for us. We've learned a lot, about the incident, what happened. I do not for 1 second, before a certain biggest fan decides he wants to jump in, I think I don't have 1 second regret what we did. I think DC United made the right move. They made the only move that they can make, which is to tell Taxi Fountas goodbye. Taxi Fountas, of course, accused of racial abuse, accused of using a very, very awful word towards Nigel Robertha after an altercation after a 4-0 loss to the Revolution. Both players were placed on administrative leave. Apparently, Robertha did hit. First, it was reported assaulted and then hit with a foam roller. So that changes a little bit in my mind. A little bit. I mean, I'm sure those things maybe are hard, but I don't know. It just didn't seem right.
They are, but
Yeah,
not the most. It wasn't a bat. It wasn't a deadly weapon.
It wasn't a punch. I guess when you hear assault, you assume he punched him or did something.
I think the initial sort of readout of how this went in our heads was much different than I think maybe like the subsequent reporting by Pablo Maurer. Basically, what the story became is that the accusation is that it was said on the field. They had to be separated. They got back to the locker room. I believe the conversation restarted. Nigel would have hit him with the foam roller, and then I think they were separated. But that's in our minds. There was like a fist fight, but that's not how it went.
Not how it went. Of course, Robertha accusing him of using the word afterwards. MLS finding that credible, but also again, it is another situation similar to what happened with the Miami game. He said situation. In this case, it is 2 strikes, you're out. I think we've had some speculation as to whether did he actually say the word? Do we think he actually said the word? I've ultimately come to the conclusion that at this point it doesn't really matter. What matters to me is Taxi's actions, particularly going after Robertha in a game 4-0 that was terrible all around. Taxi did not shower himself in glory, so I really don't understand why he was choosing or singling out Robertha on the field as a player he was trying to go after. I think we've all thought about, there's maybe a word he might have said. My response to that be, well, if that's the word that he said, that sounds very close to the word that people have thought he has used. Maybe you make a mental note of that and don't use that word again,
Use a different
particularly in a heated situation. So the team did what I think they had to do. I mean, it's all situations involving racism are horrible. This is also a very different. Once you have a situation in the locker room between a teammate, that's it. In my opinion, it's it. It's over. The team, of course, nothing official. I don't know if we've gotten anybody that really has asked about that. The timing of this was very weird. Obviously, Stephen Goff going away to the World Cup. There really wasn't, I think, a lot of the coverage, but we saw the team. And apparently, in a show of solidarity towards Nigel Robertha, wore black armbands in the first game. I don't think we got anybody to really ask them about it. And maybe if they did, they maybe said they couldn't talk about it. But that was sort of an interesting thing. I would love to maybe get a follow-up or have somebody go back and say, now that it's all over, what the black armbands, because that was a curious situation.
You're going to get that for sure. That now that the player is gone for the press availability this week, you can be sure that the first 5 questions for Wayne Rooney will be Taxi Fountas related. So, I think that's without a doubt. I just wanted to sort of similar to Ted. I think that there's there's not a guarantee of what was said. There's not we'll never have conclusive proof of anything. I think to Ted's point, I think you lose the faith of the locker room with situations that happen like this. I think there is you gotta look at, like, what is the PR component, what is the in locker room component, and then what is the business component for the team for making the decision. And there are very few arguments for not making this move. It would have been much better, and I think this is Wayne's point when he was aggravated about this. It would have been a lot better if this had happened faster and the team was in a position where they were able to actually remedy the hole in their roster.
They still can.
They can with a free agent
Mm-hmm.
or an unattached player. Certainly makes it a lot more difficult than it would have been.
Sure,
had happened earlier, but you can't really. Things had to go through the process they had to go through. The player is going to find another team.
He apparently already has. That just dropped out. He's going to Turkey, so
okay.
He's gonna be fine.
Yep.
I think is the most important part. I think there was an Instagram post from his wife. Sorry, John, I don't mean to interrupt. I'll let you jump back in. But there was an Instagram post from his wife with, I believe, saying freedom. So I think after this incident, I think the relationship between the club and the player had already soured. Team was already looking to shop him as well. And again, I would also add to anybody out there who is saying, well, why are they believing this? Why I believe this? I mean, to be honest, the team gave him the benefit of the doubt. They gave him the benefit of the doubt when they welcomed him back into the team. They welcomed him back onto the roster. They welcomed him back into the locker room. They gave him that second chance. And in my opinion, he blew it, regardless of what happened. He blew it. So it's on him, in my opinion. It's not on Robertha. It's not on DC. It's not on anyone else but Taxi Fountas.
Yep, I think that about wraps it. I think there's not too much more to say. I think you can look at, and I'm unable to look at both the display and sort of what this means for the club. I guess you have it in different. So we can look at the transfer window, and then talk about it in that way. Sorry.
Well, what it means for the club, obviously, I have to go back and catch up. I think the team still does have. They gained an international slot from him. So they gain an international slot. Obviously, they gain a designated player slot. I don't think any of the moves, they already made room for another player. They had an international slot, or at least I think 2 international slots with Lewis O'Brien being gone. And then, so I think for all intents and purposes, they are, and I think, they also, I think Samake is still technically an international that they can move up and down or loan out. So they still have, I believe, the flexibility from an international roster slot perspective for one. And obviously they have a DP slot. Now again, transfer window's closed. Everyone talking about Neymar going to Inter Miami or going somewhere in MLS. That wasn't going to happen unless PSG released his contract or set him free. Even then, I think there were some issues. You have to be a free agent before the window closes. You can't just release a team on a free. So there's a lot of stipulations, and
he went to Saudi Arabia anyway. So the end there.
Yeah, and anyone also saying that, oh, well, MLS would have found a way to bend the rules. I'm like, they would not have done this, because the amount of uproar if MLS had allowed some team to go in, pay a transfer fee, bring in Neymar after the window, you would have uproar from existing teams, owners. You would have uproar, Manchester United, Liverpool, all these teams would be teams with much, much more bigger implications, particularly when, FIFA's also trying to get a Club World Cup going and convince these teams to do it. You would have had so much of an uproar from those fans. Not going to happen. Yes. Does MLS maybe look the other way on some things? Sure. I'm not going to sit here and doubt that. I think that may be happening right now, but I don't think they would have gone this far on that. Anyway, let's get to the window. Incoming. I'm just going to read through the list. We got incoming Eric Davis, Jose Ferrado, I think is how you pronounce that, and Gabriel Pirani. And then outgoing is Victor Paulsen, and of course, Taxi Fountas. We talked about Taxi. We won't talk about him. Let's talk a little bit about who's incoming. The team went out. They needed a left back desperately. It wasn't going to cut it with having Pedro Santos run into the ground at age 35. They picked up 32-year-old Eric Davis. He actually
spring chicken 32-year-old Eric Davis, whoever.
I mean, yeah, but I've seen plenty of players at 32. I think this is it's a stopgap. I'm not saying it's a full. It is definitely a stopgap. I think he was not with a team, so I don't think they played a transfer fee or anything.
I believe they have a contract for this year, and then I think a club option for 2 years.
Yeah.
So very, very clearly a stopgap in that way.
Yeah. So this
he
is
scored a penalty. So he's his first touch for the club was a converted penalty and a loss.
And he was real quick on that visa, man. That was that must have been in the works for a while. I don't know if he has, maybe the fact that he's Panamanian and also has already had an approved visa to play on the national team. Maybe that helped. I don't know. But it was very curious how quickly that all got signed, sealed, and delivered.
We need a State Department employee during transfer season. That's what we need to happen. Come on the show. Explain this to us, please.
Yeah, so Eric Davis coming in, made an appearance in this game. I don't know if we got really much of a look to really gather much from him. Great service on free kicks. I think maybe that's the best one we got out of that. So
confident enough to take the ball before other players on the team in the penalty shootout. So
yeah, there you go. So, and I like the service idea because we have a star Benteke that needs goals and he needs service. So certainly something to watch there. Jose Ferrado, he was from Club Atletico Independiente, I believe in the Peruvian league, if I recall correctly.
A league we all follow very closely and watch every game, every week.
Watching the sizzle reel, he looks like maybe a little more. He's certainly, I think, a little bit on the height area. He seems more like a Benteke. A guy, look, basically, if Benteke goes down, we've got Eric Hurtado and Nigel Roberta, and that's it. So this was an idea to bring in somebody. I'm willing to bet this was not envisioned that this guy would really see the field other than just maybe to give Benteke a rest while giving you an opposing player up top that can win headers and be a little more agile on the ball.
Who's the forward that played 2 seasons ago? He was like the end of the season replacement, unattached player. He was tall. I think he scored 1 goal. Do you remember the guy I'm talking about?
Oh, you talking about was it Ahaje?
No. It was a guy. He's now playing in like some remote Eastern European league. Man, he was very tall. I think he was South American. I'm trying to remember what. Anyway, the goal was to not have this guy start games. I think is probably like you want to have him available as a bench. Do you think he scores more or less goals than Michael Estrada in his duration time here?
How many goals? Michael Estrada was like he was terrible, but like pretty prolific. I'm going to say less goals.
I am also going to say less. Yeah.
Like he was like, that was like the oddest thing. I think he was like the golden boot leader when it was very clearly like from any other perspective. Like if you just watch the stat, you'd be like, why are they getting rid of him? But if you watch games, you're like, oh yeah, that's why they're getting rid of him.
There were a number of discussions on the DC United Discord where there was points per game bandied about. I'm like, I know, but you watch the games, right? You see this guy. Like you're watching the same games I am, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
a player that maybe those players are very clearly stopgap filler. I think a point was raised, I believe, I think it was Jason Anderson saying, why are you bringing these guys in instead of maybe looking to build to build out like Jacob Green or Ted Pietro or Christian. I think Christian Fletcher was the name he used. My response to that would sort of be, I think they're solid. I don't think this team is so weak at those positions. I do not think that this precludes any of them from getting, minutes if they prove it in training and then go out there and play. I think you'll see Wayne Rooney go out there. I think this team is just so thin they needed to do something, and they needed to go out and get a solid piece. They are still chasing for the playoffs. We'll get into a little bit about coming up what we think these teams' chances are heading in. Do you agree with that assessment, or would you have rather them see just keep the powder dry? And
I think it doesn't matter. I think the outcome's going to be the same. If Christian Fletcher proves himself in training, he'll play because the other players, these are not blockable players. Pirani is the only player, we've not talked about him. He's the real, usage of money. He's the real gambit. The other players are just guys. By the way, the name of the player I was thinking of before, Gelman Rivas. That is the player. There were a couple like Gelman Rivas. And
yeah. Now I remember
there
him.
There was like a very loud subsection of the fan base. Like, if this guy just got minutes, he would score double-digit goals. I just look at him. He's great.
Hoya 78, in the words of Van Halen, our approach at the end of window was Panama. I think maybe there was some scouting of the Gold Cup, and maybe there was some and Panama, to their credit, performed well in the Gold Cup. They made a run. I believe it was to the semifinals. I want to say finals. I forget. I think it was semifinals.
Finals, I think, and they lost to Canada.
No, Mexico won. I believe Jamaica was in the final. I think it was semifinals.
There has been too much soccer.
In
the last 2 months. Where if I don't blame anyone for not knowing who the Gold Cup finals were.
It has been. I think this weekend I was just like, dude, man, I am like burnt out. It's like I woke up and watched Liverpool on Sunday. I watched the Kickers on Saturday. Yeah, Kickers started Saturday. I watched a little, and of course I watched the Women's World Cup games, on the replay. And it was just like there's just a lot of, and then of course the Leagues Cup has been crazy. We'll get into a little bit of our thoughts of that. Let's talk about maybe probably the biggest signing of the window of the last half of the window.
For sure, the biggest signing of the window.
Biggest signing of the window is Gabriel Pirani from Santos. He's been on loan at Fluminense, a loan with an option to buy. He takes up a U22 initiative spot. And Jesse's asking a very deep dive into our Brazilian savior and how he will be the answer to all that ails us. I don't know if I can say confidently about that. I did went out. Thank goodness that the Brazilian League was on CBS. I was able to maybe catch a little bit. It has actually been a little bit. I think I watched his game prepping for the show that would be the next weekend, and then the taxi situation dropped, and that all changed. But when I can recall correctly, so he's going to be, from what I gathered, he is a player that will be willing to go on the dribble. So he's willing to take guys on. I feel like maybe this team looked and said, we look at what Ted Pietro can do. Can we get somebody else that maybe can do those types of things? And I think if you're looking at this team right now, what they've really been missing, and why I think Benteke has been struggling, is that there isn't anybody on the ball that's able to attract attention. There's nobody else. Everybody just know Mark Benteke out of danger, and basically tell their other players, go try to beat us, basically. Go you. Pedro Santos, go you, Gabriel, no, I'm thinking through some other players out there. Ruan, Nahar, you guys try to beat us. We're not going to let Benteke beat us. And when the team played well, when Benteke was scoring, it was because they had a guy like Ted Pietro that could come on, maybe attract a little attention, and then maybe the defenders are collapsing in on him, and then suddenly Benteke is finding himself open. So I think maybe that's what they're maybe looking for out of this guy. His passing, I believe I looked at his F brief, his progressive passes and other stats like that were not great. I don't know. I'm maybe slightly curious to see where he fits in this team. Are you going to see him line up with Matthias Klick, maybe with him being a little more of an advanced player? Will you see him pair up with Benteke and sort of be, the team sort of shift from a 3-5-2 to a 3-5-1-1 or something like that? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what opening day is going to look like. We're assuming he's in training. He has his visa. I don't know if he's been spotted. You would think the team would want to maybe get that out there. We'll see what happens on the Thursday call as to whether he's there. We are presuming that one addition to the team. It's an addition from injury. Hopefully, it will be Ted Kudu-Pietro out there. John, give me overall thoughts on the window.
On the window, okay. I was like, Piranha, I got nothing. Also, I think we should say that on the way out, we didn't cover that yet. Taxi, obviously, the other one, but also Victor Paulson.
Victor Paulson.
Victor Paulson, who already played this weekend, I believe, and they lost 5-0, I think. And he got like a 4 point something on PutMub.
Let's shift the overall. I do want to mention that. So Victor Paulson got traded. I think there were some people in the fan base that were maybe a little bit upset about this. And I can understand absolutely why. I think he was a player that endeared himself.
Who think he was sexy, so they were also a little upset that he was gone. So.
I think he's a player that definitely endeared himself a little bit to the fans. I believe during a really awful performance, he sort of came out and apologized to the fans. I think it was after one of the Philly games, if I recall correctly, and he was just like, "I'm sorry." So definitely a guy who.
Sorry.
What's that?
I said, "I'm sorry. I apologize. We suck. I apologize."
Yeah, and I think Quazak 168 Canals greater than Victor. I did have to question, I think the position that he was thrown into, kind of that third center back, I think he did show some good things about when he was out there. I will say he was also making an exorbitant amount of money. He was a DP, if you recall correctly. He was sort of under that limit where the team could basically go and had to pay him as a DP with the idea that he would be bought down. I think the overall vision for him was that he was going to occupy that number 6 spot and kind of be that sort of talisman in the midfield. Became very clear that he was not up for that, and the team needed more than that. And so I think, his shift to center.
He was a luxury player they couldn't afford.
Yeah, and he was luxury. This team needed to go out and get some difference makers to fill other holes. They needed the roster spot, the international slot in particular. They needed, and I think that if that was a player that if you looked at objectively and not subjectively, which I know is a hard thing to do, you would have said, yeah, that's a player you probably cut some bait with, particularly with how good Pines is. I think Pines is what forced this move too, because he looked really good. So he occupies that spot and he's cheaper. And you've got Brendan Hines-Ike back fully healthy. He's been Brendan Hines-Ike. I don't think there's been any really drop in his play, and Derek Williams has been excellent. And then you still have Steve Birnbaum. So you look at those 4 and you're like, yep, I think it's, it's appropriate to drop him and make some space.
The injuries around the team, the depth problems where the positions were, that was what it was about. He was making too much money. He was a luxury that they couldn't afford. As you ask sort of what the overall view of the window is, I feel like the net is very the same. Mm-hmm. I don't believe we've improved. I think we have more bodies, but I think that they're not necessarily for sure improvements. I would have liked to see maybe some internal MLS moves, sort of like a sort of very projectable players, so you know how they're going to adapt for MLS because they've already been in it. And I think based on comments that Wayne Rooney made a number of times, I think that was the intention. I think there was some plans to make inter MLS moves and trades, and teams would say this player is available, and then they would inquire and they would say, no, just kidding, they're not available. So that's surely frustrating. So I think. Are we better or worse? I think that there's Ted Kudu-Pietro coming back and Pirani hopefully being at a level where he can contribute right away, because we need that. He doesn't, unfortunately for him, he does not get the opportunity to acclimate slowly over time. He's going to get thrown right into the fire because of Taxi leaving. So hopefully he's ready to do that when the time comes. I don't think we're better. It's possible that we're worse a little bit. Taxi had 6 goals this year. Benteke is the leader. I think he has 8. 9.
Yep, 8.
But he hasn't scored since June. It's August 14th. He has very little confidence. Unless you count the Leagues Cup, which I do not for this purpose.
So I'm saying there's been a little bit of a break. The team's been in a little bit of flux. Obviously.
There have been at least 6 league games since June 1st or whatever it was. So it's enough to be concerning that he's not put the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now you don't have it. Now there's not a secondary scorer that's there. So it's inevitable. There's going to have to be players that step up and perform better than they have this year if this team wants to push. But I guess the question that we can sort of ask ourselves is what is a reasonable expectation? What are we expecting for the rest of this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think DC Ulysses asked, is there a realistic chance of a decent free agent pickup this season? I mean, I believe I decided to do a little bit of Googling. I was like, what's the latest on Jesse Lingard? Because he was released by Nottingham Forest, I believe, a while ago. He was a player that was on DC's discovery list. I think he maybe got swept up in the Wayne Rooney or in the Lionel Messi hubbub, and he was apparently training over in Miami. Is he a guy that you bring in? And, what is, I mean, it's going to be hard for him to really look at, or does he maybe look at, I would say maybe he looks at Saudi Arabia as well. I think that's going to be the real, any sort of big difference maker that's going to be a free agent. You're going to look at like a Jesse Lingard. And then there's going to be the question of, there's no way you can compete with Saudi Arabia. So does he take the money and go to Saudi Arabia? Because I bet if he called up, they would find a team to put him in, or do you look somewhere else? And do you even want to do that at this point? What do you really? Does Jesse Lingard make this team better? Yes or no? Like, what do you think? Maybe I don't know.
Maybe better than it's possible. I think it's.
Yeah.
I think the challenge here from a roster building perspective is you don't want to commit long term to a player that's unattached in this particular space. Even if it's Jesse Lingard, I think you would, in a perfect world, like a 6-month option to buy, basically. But what he's likely to be able to find is he can get a 3-year contract in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah,
that would be the smart move for him from like what offers are on the table. So, I would put chances of us finding a free agent signing that's a difference maker like very, very low. 1%, 2%. I think it's unlikely. I think we're going to have an open spot.
Yeah. And then says, F me gently with a chainsaw. What are you looking for in a taxi replacement? And what are realistically going to get? What are you realistically going to get? I think this year, I mean, it's going to be, in my mind, it's probably Jesse Lingard or nothing. I mean, if he wants to come, he wants to be here. I'm sure Wayne likes him. Wayne's a player I'm sure he's a player he knows. I think the question is going to be, I think the real question is going to be, if DC thinks Wayne Rooney will be here next year, maybe you go out and you get Jesse Lingard. And if it doesn't work out, then I'm sure you can find a way to get rid of that contract, mutually terminate it, offload it, find something else. Like, I mean, honestly,
termination. I was just going to say, when you were looking at I was like, when you were asking about free agents, I was like, I know a free agent. He's a creative midfielder. He could score from distance. He doesn't have a club right now. He's a national team starter. I wonder what Ravel Morrison is doing right now. I wonder if he's available to play for DC United. By the way,
maybe. I mean, shoot, maybe. I mean, he's unregistered. I mean, they could just bring him back on and register him again.
I would like to pay. This is an open call. DC United staff, I know some of you listen. If you want to give me an off-the-record understanding of what the hell actually happened, you pick your award. I would really like that information. If you don't want me to say it on the show, I won't. I just really, for my own edification, want to know what happened. What was the conversation that happened between him and the club where they were like, you know what? F off. Here's your money. We're not going to register you. Just hang out. It's fine. We would need you. It would be great if you were on the team. We could certainly use you. You played almost every game when you were here last year. You scored 3 goals, which is more output than any of our midfielders right now. I would love it. We'll never know. It's like it's memory hold. It's going to be crazy. I would hit me up, staff. Be friends with me.
Brandon Zebron asks, does a healthy Teku Di Pietro immediately take over the taxi spot, or is it Roberta, Pirani, or Ferrater? I mean, I don't know at this point. I think it's going to be a question. I mean, for all we know, I do not know if Pirani has his visa yet, and we don't have Goff here, who usually has his ear a little more to the ground, maybe on those types of things because he's at the World Cup. So I mean, I think we'll find out probably Thursday or whatever the next media availability is. Who's ready to go, who's not. I mean, I think and the question is how healthy is Teku Di Pietro? I think we heard it was a few weeks. I think we thought maybe by Leagues Cup he'd be ready, but that wasn't the case. Now it's been an additional 2 weeks.
I bet he's ready to go. I bet the Leagues Cup sort of break gave him the, we don't know if he's fully running in training. That's the thing. Sorry. The question is does he turn the keys over for that spot if he's healthy? and have minutes, I would think you would. I think it's going to be a rotating door for a little bit of Pirani, of Ted, of maybe Nigel in that spot. That's not really his strength, but they
I
might.
mean, you have to ask too. You have to ask too. What do they think Pirani's role is going to be? Is he going to be in that 3-man midfield? Is he just going to slot right into Lewis O'Brien? He's a very different player from Lewis O'Brien, or does he shift up? I'm willing to bet the original thought process was he would slot right into where Lewis O'Brien is, with the idea that Taxi was going to be there.
Right
now, Taxi's not there, so the question is, where do you push him up higher? Do you move him around? Where does he fit into this team? We'll see. It's going to be. We know like Benteke is going to start. His partner, I think, is going to be a bit of a mystery heading into this game, and I think also maybe benefits the team a little bit because I think it does bring a little bit of unpredictability. So we'll see how it works out.
I didn't get to answer the earlier question about what I would like to see in a replacement for Taxi. I think if you think Wayne's going to be here next year, the best thing you can do is talk to Christian Benteke and say, who that you have played with enables you to be your best player, like your best self. What players have you played with anywhere in the world? You're here for another year and a half. We want to get the most out of you. We want to give you the best opportunity to succeed. Give us some names. And maybe they've done that. But I feel like you've got a finite time. You've got an asset that you're trying to maximize. But I mean, Julian Gressel would be the name, and he'll be a free agent at the end of this.
I wonder. They talked about Vancouver wanting to move east. I wonder if there was maybe we already went out and signed. I wonder if there was maybe an attempt to maybe make up and say, "Hey, you want to come back here?"
They better send a damn basket to that Columbus address and be like, "Listen," because he's a free agent next year. He'll be an MLS free agent. I think he'd go anywhere in the world on the East Coast other than here. Because
I think if Casper's gone, maybe you see him come back. I bet he knows who the genesis of this move was. I think everybody does. I think that would be the one thing. I gotta tell you, I don't know how you're talking about on the chat about how Casper's seat is in stone, like he's going to be there. I'm not so sure. I'm thinking it feels very weird at the team right now. I'm not so sure. But
for sure. I remember someone was saying this in the Discord, like the vibes feel extremely off. The Taxi thing, I don't know if we ever talked about it, the guy that got fired,
shoot. We completely glossed over that.
I mean, Ravel Morrison being non-employed employee of the team. There's just been a lot of stuff this year.
I don't know how in an ownership you can look at all of this and think that this is all like, no, we just need to give him another year. I'm just like, he's shown. I mean, he has shown. I think the biggest problem is particularly this year, apart from everything else, is Wayne Rooney came into the building, and I think there is and it's still to this day. I think Wayne has done an excellent job this year, considering how bad things are. I think he's proven himself to be a decent manager. I just think right now it's who's directing the club. Is it Wayne? Is it Casper? I think there's a power struggle going on. And I think it came out in that article when I still go back to that day when I think it was, I believe it was Pablo that put out that the speculation was that Casper was going to be kind of he's the guy who knows the spreadsheet. And then it was like, Goff was like, no, he's still in charge. I'm still director. I'm still in charge of this operation. So I don't know.
That was a direct quote from Dave Casper through Steve Goff to respond to that, by the way. I'm still in charge. I mean, he is still in charge. Yeah, I think that was Brian, by the way, saying that. I think his seat is I think it's not hot. I think it's warm. I would say that, Wayne has proven himself in some ways a good manager. I think that the thing I've identified is a lack of leadership within the player ranks. Like who is stepping up? There's Steve, right? Who's accountable to the media? Who's in a position where he will talk about sort of what's going on with the club? It feels like there's just a giant vacuum, and everyone is just kind of there filling time. And there's no one that has been there for a long period of time. It's a team in transition. The young players who may be here long term don't feel like they are in a position to speak. as much. There's no Bill Hamid on this club anymore, right? Andy Nahar is not an outspoken individual. The team is just in this weird sort of limbo. It's reflected on the field, and it's reflected sort of in vibes and just the way that the team carries itself. So,
I go back to I sat and watched Philly just bring on guys. Yeah, they brought on a guy they drafted out of Drexel. They didn't even draft him. They drafted by another team, and then they played on their youth team. And he comes in and scores the winning goal against Querétaro to take this team to the semifinals of the League Cup. Against, they will be hosting Miami. And, we'll get into the Leagues Cup review. DC didn't have a bad Leagues Cup. I don't think they did about as well as you could have expected. Better than expected, to be honest. Yeah. But I think you look at what they did, and as a club, and I talk about them a lot, and I'm probably some fans are tired of hearing me about it, but I just look at that and I say, like, they have an identity. They know who they are. They get absolute buy-in from everybody up and down that roster. And that the difference that makes is they are the first MLS team that punches above their weight. Well, maybe Kansas City did it for a little bit too.
Yep, for sure.
But they feel like something that is sustainable, that can just keep going, because they have just created this pipeline. They can just keep pumping in players and pumping in new players. They sell, Paxton Aronson and Brendan Aronson. We got two other guys we're just going to throw right in there. And I look at DC and I'm like, wow, we've got we got talent that looks promising. The guys that are coming in, Christian Fletcher, Ted Gudapietro, Akambone. And it's like, this is actually this is like any other year you would call this like a golden generation of talent, of young talent in the team. The problem is you got to compare yourself with a lot of other teams that are doing a lot more and doing it better. And Philly's one of them, right up the street.
It's the change in platform, right? Like, we have talented players too, but those players in Philadelphia are coming into a system that's been consistent, and it's a play style that's consistent, and expectations that are known, and leadership that is unchanged. So they're able to know what's expected of them, and then the rest of the world is already looking, because there's a proof of what you're going to get out of these players. If you buy a Philadelphia Union player, you know what you're going to get. We have Kevin Paredes, who I believe, when he's out of his injury situation in Wolfsburg, I think is going to get more of a chance this year. Mm-hmm. But I think you got to keep banging that drum, because any team can be the Union, right? Because it's not money. It's intelligence, and it's committing to a vision and sticking with it.
We are when they announced that they were breaking down the sort of the regions, or I think DC had a monopoly on the sort of Northern Virginia market, so to speak, down to Richmond, I think, and when MLS announced they were doing that, DC was one of the clubs that, a lot of people who are in the know of the academies that were like, that's an area we can go after. That's an area that's talent rich. And I hope it spawned something, because I think it did spawn the team to make their academy free, to put the development in there. But I mean, it's got to be more, and they got to have develop those. One thing Philly did, that's they have their academy team, but they sort of developed a good relationship with all the other academies out there, and made it sort of a more cooperative atmosphere. I mean, what they did is fantastic, and it's like, I know DC can be that. We're putting the bare minimum, maybe a little bit extra, maybe like a little extra than bare minimum than we used to now in academies and developments. We have a academy director that is running things. We're doing all of those things, and we've still produced some pretty good talent. And it's just like, man, if you just turn it up a little bit, you can build something. And I mean, I think what Philly does is Philly shows that you can still win in this game. I think this is going to be a fascinating game coming up in the Leagues Cup. You can have Philly versus Miami, because the one thing you can look at with Philly is say, well, yeah, they've been successful, but they've also not won anything other than a Supporters Shield in a weird 2020 season. They've made MLS Cup finals, Eastern Conference finals. They've lost to teams that have played better. I would sit here and say, well, that's sure as heck better than what DC's trying to do right now. Like, I would trade what DC has with what Philly has in an absolute heartbeat, even with all the heartache and everything like that, because they're still putting themselves in positions to go out and win those games, and very nearly win those games. They were a header from a DP away from winning MLS Cup last year and being the talk of the town. I think actually I think they will get over the hump and actually win this Leagues Cup thing. I think they have enough behind them. I think, and also rumors that Messi has rolled his ankle, so that might be the excuse. I don't know how much we want to get into Leagues Cup. I know we've kind of deviated a little bit. Win over Montreal, I think was a gutsy win. Made the finals, and then of course their 3-0 loss to Pumas was not so great. They for what it's worth, how bad this season's been. They seem to have set out to the idea of like we are not gonna lose. We may not beat Philly. We are certainly not going to lose to them this year, because now they have 2 games where they have not given up a goal, 2 0-0 games. Obviously, a loss in PKs, hard done. I felt really bad for Chris Durkin, who actually I thought played an excellent game against Philly. If I had to point something out, I think he was really good in that game. He unfortunately misses the PK when the team had it, but who knows what would have happened if this team had managed to win that game. I think they would have probably then gotten smacked in their next game, but hey,
undoubtedly,
yeah,
undoubtedly.
Would they have played America? I think was the next game America, or was that? I can't remember. I have to go back and look.
I'm not sure.
But sorry, never mind. No. What am I saying? Nashville played America. That was a crazy game. I feel like I have my head Philly played them. Anyway, no, see that. Should we go to should we talk about any of the upcoming schedule? Like, what are we looking at? I mean, you look at it, and it's not infeasible this team could make the playoffs.
And I'd say it's a coin flip either way, and both of them are extremely believable outcomes.
You've got
just missing and just getting in are seemingly just as likely.
I will feel overjoyed if we get 7th. 8th, 9th would be nice, and I mean I'm expecting 10th, 11th. We'll get in a little bit. We'll get into a little bit. We had some questions coming up, so maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. DC United Kingdom, if you had 3 wishes for DC on the pitch or off it, what would they be? I would say take the top 3 things that Philadelphia Union done, and there you go. There's my answer.
Done easy.
Okay, I'll maybe give a little bit more. Off the pitch, I think they are trying to do a better job. When I was at the Kickers game, there were some people who are involved in some of the supporter groups that visited down, and they were kind of talking in. The team apparently really wants to try to recreate Lot 8. And I think I mentioned this in my post, my tweet. I'm still going to call it a tweet. Screw you, Elon. I said in my tweet, I said, I think you got to admit that like Lot 8's done. It's not going to exist. And so now look to build something new, try to do something different. Whether it's open up some sort of common area, I don't know. Yeah, but you can't just keep trying to recreate Lot 8 because you're not going to do it. You're going to fail, in my opinion, if you try to do it. So
if they try, I would go. If they figure out a way to do it in a way, like if they bust over from RFK, I would do it.
Yeah, that's my only option. Is like do Lot 8, figure out a way to rent out the parking lot out in the
literally in Lot 8,
in Lot 8, and then just have some rent some buses and have it go over. So that would be the only way. Sorry, I want to make sure you get your answer in. So
I would say new GM, a new coach with a 5-year contract would be 2 things that I'd want to see off the field. What do I want to see off the field? I would say I would like to see DC United be the largest spender in the academy space in the entire league, other than maybe, whatever Arthur Blank, any of the like super rich guys. If the money is no object, folks will put out. We're eighth in the league in spend on roster. I would like to see us be number like 3 in sort of academy spend, because it's a lot of lottery tickets you're buying, right? I mean, there's a couple players in the academy, in the MLS Next Pro team, where they are, 2 of them were in the All-Star game competition. They're U.S. National team youth players. Get more of those lottery tickets. Some of them are going to pan out and be a team similar to Philadelphia, to Ted's point, that is willing to allocate a number of minutes each year to those players, no matter what. Christian Fletcher, for instance, should get any minute that Eric Hurtado gets, and more, honestly, because you have to look at, how big of a deal is it if we make 9th place versus get Christian Fletcher 500 minutes this season, so he's actually in a position to contribute next year. I would argue that it is more important to develop an asset for the future than scrape into the play-in game. That's so a plan. I think it's a replay. If you've been listening to this show for however many years we've been doing it now, we've asked for a plan. We've asked for something that is understandable and repeatable. And I don't expect the casual fan to be able to explain it to anybody, but we should be able to. We should know exactly what the plan is going to be. And it's not just, we've had conversations with people on the team. It's not just hardworking players that are technically savvy. Like that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. It's about what is the aspirations of the team? Where do they want to be in 5 years? And if they're, what are their metrics for success? And tell me those things. I'd love to know those things. That's the way you get buy-in in your hard court, outside of just general feelings. And I have to love this team because I love this team. That's what I want. I want to know. I want to be able to explain to anybody, like, this is what this team's about.
I just want to see the team. And I know, like, Wayne Rooney was maybe a drastic move in some people's eyes. I don't really see that as a drastic move. I see that as desperate. Yeah, desperate is a good way to put it. I would love to see this team. First of all, I would love to see them say goodbye, Dave Casper. Thanks, but no thanks. And I would also honestly, at this point, I would love to see them say, okay, we've got here are the young players. Here's your Chris Durkin. Here's your Taxi Fountas. Or sorry, Taxi Fountas. Your Teku Pietro. Your Teku Pietro. Here is your Christian Fletcher, your Akambone. Honestly, if I was the owner and we signed a new contract for Steve Birnbaum, I would be shaking. Like, what are you doing? Did we at least get?
They've got to have somebody that can speak to the media and be accountable, because there's no one else that's doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. And again, I don't think Steve is as bad as everybody said it is. I also, but it is what it is with that situation. I would like to see this team hand the keys over to somebody who's like, here's an identity. Here's what we're going to do. Honestly, like I am at the point where it's just like, and I know this is coming off somebody who is not hot right now, but a Bob Bradley comes in. The situation in Toronto, I think we're learning, is way beyond. Bob Bradley is not at fault here. I'll say that much. Bob Bradley's not at fault here. This is a ownership group that basically tried to just like shoehorn a lot of things in with big time players and personalities that basically have decided they're bigger than the club. And I think Bob Bradley is still a fantastic coach. I think he still does a good job. I'd love to bring him in. I'd love to see us go out and do what Columbus did. They went out and they poached Wilfred Nancy from Montreal. They just went up and grabbed him. I would love to see us go down and grab Oscar Pereira from Orlando. Call Oscar and say, hey, we got a project here. We want you to be the chief part of it. You're going to be able to build something that you want. You're going to build a team that you want. Talk about a front office. You talk about a front office that's been terrible. You cannot have to go far to find out how bad Orlando was at the start of their season. No direction. Similar to DC, they were signing Kaká. They went and signed, and then they got accused of tampering with No Chirino. That whole thing. I mean, they were a disaster. The Jason Christ, the collapses, the absolute farce that was Kyle Laren's whole situation and contract and the option and all of that stuff. I mean, they were an absolute joke and a mess. And Oscar Pereira came in and righted that entire ship, where they have now become. I mean, most of the same guys are still there. So, it's what you need. You need something like that, something that shows that you're serious and that you want to go out and do something. I want this team to go out and do that. So, another question from Loud Adam. I want to get through these. If or when Senior Wayne leaves, who steps up next? Of the current assistants, Shuttleworth, Robinson, Brilliant, or somebody else entirely? Somebody else entirely. It has to be. All due respect to those names, it has to be someone else. It has to be someone. It has to show. It has to be. I really hope if Wayne leaves, I think immediately, if you are smart, you say, Benteke, Saudi Arabia is probably going to pay you a lot of money. Why don't you go talk to them and we'll release you from your contract? Matthias Klick, love you, but maybe Matthias Klick is one player I wouldn't mind sticking around for a little bit, just because I got his jersey.
Apparently, Carl Robinson is interviewing for the TFC job.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to.
Maybe
That
not.
would be a weird. That would be a
We didn't
weird.
think we didn't think Chris Armas was going to get either, and yet he did.
Fair enough. I don't know.
And then
Maybe
he,
that's.
and then he became assistant to the Stars for 2 Premier League clubs
I
over the
mean,
course of 12 months.
walking into that mess, we already saw Matt Hedges show up and then immediately depart for Austin. Immediately was like, I'm out of this mess. So I mean, to me, it has to be someone else. I mean, I'm thinking you've already talked about it. Same idea.
Shuttleworth would be neither of those guys to me scream builder and long term. And even that's the challenge, right? Like even Wilfried Nancy, that's a coach you want for a team you got now, like for a team that's ready to compete. That's the struggle. Bob Bradley also strikes me that way. He succeeded at LAFC building a team, but he also had, from my understanding, like carte blanche to build the team and make the shots and call the plays. So like I don't know. To your point, if Wayne leaves, then you got to think about reloading or sort of not necessarily like strip the team for parts, but like, all right, we need to get younger here and not sign all these like, 1-year deal guys that are, you don't need a Pedro Santos if you're like those type of players we don't need. So I want a player I want a coach that would specialize in being like, I have a 4-year plan. I'm Jim Curtin 2.0. You're going to bring me in here. We're not talking about the playoffs next year. We're not talking about winning MLS Cup next year. I've got a 5-year plan to take this group of young players and move them to here and sell some of them, and then bring that next group in. And at the end of the 5 years, I want to have sold 2 players. I want us to be comfortably in 5th or 6th place, and I want to have the next level of youth players that are knocking at the door. Someone tell me that plan, I'm buying season tickets.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I would consider it, even though it's a 3-hour drive. Right. DC Ulysses asks, is there a case for optimism? They get into playoffs. I think this team could get, I mean, even without Taxi, I would argue that with Taxi, even in that team, I can maybe attribute one game that they won, and that was in Dallas. That's 1.3 points that he earned for us. Other than that, some of his goals were in garbage time, or they were games where there were others out there scoring goals and making opportunities. The team was already looking to offload him, I think, mostly for performance reasons. Like, he was just not the same effective player. He's also, again, the team completely changed how they played when they brought in Wayne Rooney. So I don't think he fit what Wayne Rooney wanted to do anyway. So, I mean, is there a case for optimism? I think if Ted Kudapietro steps up, if Pirani pans out, I think there's a good chance that continues to step up, I should say. Like, Ted Kudapietro has already stood up. We directly tie a game that he won, and also a game that he managed to scratch a draw from his appearances. So he is a guy that absolutely can step up and can make a difference in this team. So, I mean, if he continues that or grows into that, then I think, I think absolutely. And then also you look at, if Pirani works out, I think this team could still make the playoffs. I think they absolutely could. I think they've gotten a rest. They've gotten some rest in some of those players. Now you got 12 games. You do not have, I won't say you have an easy schedule, but you don't exactly have a completely far out there tough schedule. Philly is maybe the one game that you look at that's not winnable. And even that's a game.
And you just took them to extra time.
You just took them to penalties, and you've played well against them. They're the one team that apparently has figured them out. So I don't know.
Sample size of one, and also with
two games.
That's fair. That's
two
fair.
games. Both in Philly. So
I would say my only level of optimism is if Christian Benteke scores 5 goals in those 12 games remaining. You need him to be a double-digit scorer for sure, but also closer to 15. You need to be the player that he can be. Yeah. If he's not, there won't be enough goals, and we won't make it.
Yeah. All right, folks. I think that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for jumping in to the show. We really appreciate it. We appreciate the support we got from almost all of y'all over our decision to take a break. You guys, we paused the Patreon, and some people were like, "Nope, keep charging me. It doesn't matter. I want to support you guys."
We don't know how to do that, so we didn't charge you, but now we're turning it back on.
Yeah, it's Patreon. Patreon is going back on, but we're here to close out the season. But thank you guys so much for the support you guys show us each and every week. It's what's helped us. It's what's got us mentioned in The Athletic, which I think is something. Even though he didn't drop our specific name, which would have been nice.
Maybe it was not us. Who knows? It could have been anybody. It's hard to say. But yeah,
it could have been.
I want to reiterate. Ted said I think it was not a. I don't want to overblow the decision, right? Like it's not life and death. It's not. We didn't do anything, but I think it was important for us to sort of game out where we wanted to be, and I was hoping that people would understand that, even if they didn't support it, they'd understand it, and I think most people did. And we didn't stop watching this team through this. We didn't stop loving, for against our better judgment, this team, and we never will. And we're going to keep doing this podcast until the cows come home. We're I think what did I say? We're like. It's like 600 episodes combined, or it's some crazy number if you calculate everything in and all the bonus episodes and all that stuff. So we're not going anywhere. We're going to keep on doing our thing, and I think it's we ask a lot of this club. I think the good thing I think the break enabled me to like sort of look back at who we are and sort of what we've evolved from. And I think that there was a period where we were doing a lot of player interviews. We were very in the loop, sort of with what the team was going on, and I think trying to make sure that we were being even-handed in coverage, especially like through times of trouble. And I think we're still going to be even-handed. I think we have been. I think we're much more righteous and like our discontent around what this club is like long term, and sort of how fans feel about it. People, particularly people who have been here a long time. I think that's a valuable position. I think it's like having the knowledge of history, not necessarily like the trophies from pre 2006. I mean, those are important, but like even since then, even since I've been here, like I think it's valuable to look at where we are and where we could be. And to Ted's, go back and check that thread out on the Twitter page, sort of looking at that. I think it's good that there isn't a lot of fan-led media left. There isn't a lot of media in general covering this team. So,
it took a Women's World Cup to basically grind. I mean, this team was, even through its Leagues Cup run, no one was talking about this team. I listened to the Extra Time podcast. They might have previewed it a little bit, but they certainly were not talking about DC. Maybe because of what was going on with Taxi and everything like that. But I mean, it's very clear. This team is, and I think it's all we all want it to be. We all want it to be more. I think it's the most important thing for sure. So
the value that we continue to hold is making our expectations clear and our hopes clear about what this team can be. And we're going to get excited when they win. Yeah. And we're going to get carried away. We always do. Go back 500 episodes. We win 2 games in a row, and we're like, man, championship. But in the long term, like I think the value that we have is to say, here's the things that we think are important. Here's the things that the rest of the fans think important. They may not be always the same thing, but we're certainly going to use whatever little platform we have to demand more and to expect that the team lives up to it's whatever it stood for in the past, and also makes a good faith effort to reward the people that spend their time, money, and energy on this club, even though it hasn't won a trophy since 2013, even though it's not the glory days anymore. People are still here, and I think what we do here is share that voice with the people who are listening, the new folks, to understand sort of you deserve more. You don't even know you deserve more if you're a new fan, but you do, and that's what we talk about.
Yeah, I mean that's why I'm here. I mean, I grew up watching this team as a kid, and I've seen the glory days. I've seen the days, the sort of second era of greatness, and I just want it back. And we will continue to call out the team, and we don't think that they're doing that. And I don't know if we're being listened to. I don't know if Jason Levian will suddenly turn on this podcast and listen to us. He probably won't.
Why would you guys like a job? Why would you?
But hey, I will say when he does get around, he suddenly sees things, he listens, and I think 2018 was a good example of that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go check out some of the articles that were written.
Or our first 10 episodes of our podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, all right, guys, I think that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for listening. We're so glad to be back. We're going to come back. We're going to talk some Spirit. So definitely stick around if you're into that. Again, patreon.com/RFK Refugees. Start donating to the show. It's great stuff. We're really working on getting the content out there for you guys. John's Thursday show might be returning. Maybe I'll step in. We're definitely going to try. It'll happen.
I'll be back from my travel. There will be something I'm talking about on Friday.
Great. So definitely check that. Join the Patreon if you want to get that early analysis and preview. Setting yourself up for Sunday when DC United plays for the Red Bulls for the first time this year, which is crazy.
That's insane.
MLS scheduling is nuts this year, and that's one of the
Atlanta Cup rivalry must be respected. MLS must be respected.
All right, folks, that's gonna do it. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll catch you guys next week. Vamos.